If you see this on my bed, no you don't, you can just ignore that. I'm trying to do a haul at some point. That's a video for another day. Anyways, Diagwitch. It has been 3 years since I had my first MS relapse, which is bizarre to think about. So I want to talk about life after my MS diagnosis. So the last 3 years, the highs, the lows. But it's crazy to think this time 3 years ago, I was in the depths of my first relapse. I lost my ability to walk. I lost control of my eyes. They were like moving in little circles. The room was moving in circles. Like everything in the room was moving. I was seeing 2 of everything. Sorry, I'm not holding my fingers correctly. I was seeing 2 of everything. I lost hearing in my right ear. I was struggling to talk. I couldn't get words out of my mouth. I lost my ability to write. I didn't even know how to hold a pen. Like if I went to pick it up, I didn't know where the pen would sit on my fingers. It was like the most alien experience ever. It was like I'd never held a pen before. I had numbness all on the right side of my face and on the right side of my head. I experienced the worst migraine I've ever experienced in my life. I didn't even know you could feel that level of pain in your head. And because of that, I then was like extremely sensitive to light and sound. Like I remember if someone was coughing, it was so sore in my ear. Even like the sound of television, even just the sound of someone speaking. Because I was so dizzy from everything moving, I had like extreme nausea, constantly vomiting. I couldn't drink or eat anything. I think I went like 5 days without eating something because of the dizziness. And then that caused me to get like really dehydrated. I'm not gonna lie lads, it was hell. It was hell. It's hell in there. It's horror. You have to be a certain type of person to survive. That's just a brief overview of the very first relapse. I'm not going to go into extreme details. If you want that, you can see my MS diagnosis story. But yeah, it was hell. But it has been 3 years since that very first attack. 3 years. So I'm going to talk about the highs and the lows of the last 3 years. The lows, I'm mainly going to focus on everything around MS. I'm not going to go into loads of other like personal details. It'll just be the low is MS, and I'm going to talk about all the different lows that I experienced with MS. But I'm also going to talk about the highs. I kind of want this video to show that although a lot of bad things can happen, there are still good things that can happen. And I think in particular, if I was watching this video as a newly diagnosed, I feel like it would have given me a little bit of hope. So hopefully this is of some help or gives hope to someone who is potentially newly diagnosed, or even just anyone who has an MS diagnosis or any other chronic illness. Because let me tell you something lads, that first year, like it's actually mad to think back on that. Like I feel so sorry for that version of me, and I feel even more sorry for the, like when I look back on photos of me just before that first relapse, I feel so sorry for her. It sounds so weird to say this, but I feel so sorry looking at myself in those photos, because I'm like, I had no idea what was about to happen. I had no idea the level of physical disability that I was going to experience, the level of trauma, the level of just fucking pain and sadness. And let me tell you something lads, although the first year was by far the worst year, and most people with MS will tell you the first year, and sometimes it can be the first 2 years, are just hell. They can be really tough, but things do get better. So anyways, I want to show you the lows and the highs that I've had over the last 3 years. I think I'll talk about the lows first. Don't worry, you gotta stick around for the highs, okay? It was obviously a challenge to get to where I am now. As I said, for me, the first year was hell. It's hell in there. Sorry. Gotta love a Gemma Collins quote. Obviously, like not obviously, but when I had my first relapse, I didn't get my diagnosis at that point because I only had 1 lesion and 1 clinical relapse at that point. I didn't get a diagnosis for about 5 months, which is actually for some people a relatively quick diagnosis. It just depends on how progressed your MS is. If I had went in with multiple lesions on my brain, I may have gotten that diagnosis at that point, but like some people are waiting years for a diagnosis, depending on like, and in particular where people are living, like what countries they're in, it can be really challenging to get a diagnosis. Sorry, bad brain day. Delicious. But until I got my diagnosis, so I was 5 months waiting for that diagnosis. And it wasn't even that I was like waiting for results. It was pretty much we were waiting for things to get worse before they could give me that diagnosis. But within that 5 months, I had like 3 relapses. Nothing was as bad as the first one, which is the one I explained. But the second one wasn't great, but because my eyes weren't affected, it was definitely manageable. And then the third one was a pseudo relapse. Potentially it was caused by getting a vaccine, because anything that causes an immune response, sorry, my leg is stuck. Anything that causes an immune response can trigger a relapse, but it's not an official relapse, it's a pseudo relapse because it's been caused by something else. And obviously see if you get a vaccine, an immune response is initiated. Anyways, so I had those 3 relapses. So like I was constantly just out of work, in work, out of work, in work, out of work. Couldn't really do anything because for me, when I have a relapse, I'm very physically disabled. So yeah, my MS is like super active. I went on a treatment. My first treatment didn't work. I also hated that treatment. I had really bad hot flushes. Your whole chest, neck, face would like, it was like it was burning. It was like having really bad sunburn, and it'd be bright red. And it wouldn't happen just like after you'd taken the medication. It could happen like 2 hours after. And like you could be in work when it happened, you could be out and about, you could be socializing, and it was just very uncomfortable. And a bit sore. Like if you didn't eat the right foods, you had to have really high fat, really high protein meal before taking it, and you had to take it twice a day. And if you didn't eat a right food, like you'd feel very nauseous with it. Or if you drank like alcohol, even they say like drinking alcohol after an hour of taking it is grand, but even if you waited like 2 hours, you could still feel sick with it. So I hated that treatment, but it did do something. I mean, I didn't go into relapse when I was on it, but it wasn't strong enough. I did get a new lesion at that point, so I had to change to a different treatment. So I'm now on a second treatment, or a disease modifying therapy, DMT, for my MS, and I'm very happy on that treatment. It's probably up there with one of the strongest types of treatments for MS, but I'm still not in remission. Like I've had, my last 2 scans have shown new activity on my brain, which obviously isn't good. And the thing is, when you're up at the higher end of like strength of treatment for a disease, you begin to run out of options, you know? Whereas if you're starting off at something that's like not the strongest, you've got like, let's say the weakest ones, and you've got the middle ones, and you've got the strongest one. If you're at the bottom and things aren't working, you've got way more options. But when you're kind of at the top already, you don't have a huge amount of other options. So I'm not really in the place that I would like to be. Ideally, it would be great to not have new lesions every time I get a new scan. Or ideally, it would be great to not have MS. Honestly, that would be the best. But I haven't developed new symptoms and haven't gone into clinical relapse. So although I am getting these new lesions, I don't know that they're happening. Now, it's still not good. Any lesion isn't good on your brain. But I haven't gone into clinical relapse, i.e. new symptoms or worsening of previous symptoms. So not the best place to be in, but it definitely could be worse. Anyways, so that's kind of like a little bit of background of like the kind of not great things with MS. And you know, like switching between treatments, like you have to go through the whole rigmarole of all the new symptoms or side effects that come with a treatment. Like the treatment that I'm on now, it's taken me my 4th infusion to really feel like, oh fuck, this isn't massively impacting me for weeks on end now. Like my first one, I was floored for about a month. Now I'm on I get it every 6 months, but I'm on my 4th one. Well, I just had my 4th one in January, and I was grand after about a week. I was like, oh. Now I still would be super like cautious in terms of energy and stuff, and like not overdoing it, because I am at my weakest at that point. So even though I feel like maybe like I'm not as bad as the last time I got my infusion, I still wouldn't go and do loads of things because it would be like so easy to get run down at that point. I'm at my absolute weakest. Anyway, so it hasn't been like the smoothest of journeys, the smoothest. I mean, going in every 6 months to get scans and then meeting your consultant, and it's just like, another lesion. Another lesion. You get a lesion. You get a lesion. You know, like it's not the easiest of information. But we're not here to focus on all the bad things, okay? So let's talk about some of the good things. Finished my master's. Excuse me. I did bioprocess engineering whilst I was working full-time, FYI. Obviously when I was really sick, I was out sick from work, and I had to do like, what are those things? Extenuating circumstances in college. You know, the thing where it's like, I need extra time because my life is fucked at the moment. I had to do one of those, but hey, I still fucking completed it. And I don't know if you know, but I got a 1st class honours. So if you're new here, you won't know that. But if you're not new here, you will absolutely know that, because I didn't stop talking about it. It was all over my Instagram. I talked about it on probably many vlogs, so I'm sorry if you already know that information, but I am going to talk about it for the rest of my life because it was hell. Now, I was in my last semester of my master's when the whole MS thing started. It wasn't like I was going through MS and I was like, I'm gonna start a master's. No, I was at the tail end of it. Now I still had to do my thesis. So I had that semester, the last semester, and then my thesis. So I'm like, a master's thesis? I wouldn't say it's a walk in the park. That I wouldn't. So you know, still a big achievement in my personal humble opinion. I have also done many festivals, and I feel like this is like a really big deal, because let me tell you something. When I was going through all those relapses, I honestly couldn't even think about a time where I would have the energy to like exercise, never mind going to a festival. I never thought of a time where I'd be able to drink again. Don't get me wrong, not a massive drinker. I love like festivals, I love going to like events or concerts, or like if it's someone's birthday, those type of events, that's when I'll drink, but I'd never like have a glass of wine or something. Or like I'd never be like, I'll go and get a few in the local. Bad brain day. But like I remember those 5 months I couldn't even think about being drunk, because the thought of that, because you know when you're drunk and you get the spinnies, oh Jesus. Actually, if I think about it too much, I genuinely think I could get sick. But at that point I couldn't even, I wouldn't take the risk of being drunk, because I couldn't be reminded of that dizziness, and I feel like I would just be like immediately sick. So like I couldn't even imagine like going to a festival and having drink, or like going to a concert having drink. I couldn't. But yeah, so I couldn't imagine having the energy to do it, the strength to do it, to be able to socialize, to be able to talk to people. I was just miserable as well. So like I was just like I couldn't imagine myself in that situation and enjoying it. To me, having done so many festivals over the last, well, mainly they were all last year, I did one before that, but that's a fucking achievement for me. And let me tell you something, lads, I love a festival. I love a festival. I love them, I love them, I love them. So I did Boomtown, which is in the UK. I did Glastonbury. Sorry, shut the front door. I did Glastonbury. Yeah, I did Glastonbury. Again, UK. Lost Village. Again, UK. I'm sorry, and I'm saying that like in the UK because it's an even bigger challenge when you're going to a festival in a different country. You have to think about flights. You have to think about booking accommodation the night before. There's a lot that goes on. It's way more challenging. Then you have to get a flight home after the festival. It's hard going. I did Beyond the Pale, I did All Together Now, I did loads of festivals, and I'm very proud of that. I've also done just like loads of concerts outside of festivals, which, you know, you need energy to do those things. So that to me is just the best feeling in the world, and I'm so happy that I can do all that again. I started my YouTube channel. I wanted to start a YouTube channel for years, for many years. I was too scared. I was like, no one will watch my videos. No one will care what I'm saying. People will think my content's shit. Let me tell you something now. Don't give a fuck. And also at that time, after I'd experienced my first relapse, I was like, well, nothing can be as scary as what I've just experienced. To go from being like perfectly healthy to very physically disabled and not have a fucking clue what was going on, nothing can be as scary as that. But certainly not setting up a YouTube channel wouldn't be as scary as that. So I was like, I'm gonna do that, and I am so fucking glad I did it. I love YouTube. I love watching YouTube. I love making videos. I love editing. I love talking to people on the line. Not necessarily one-to-one, because like, oh Jesus, that does send me over the edge, you know, the owl anxiety would get the better of me. But on the line, don't mind that now. Would I have ever set it up if I didn't get diagnosed with MS, if I didn't experience that? Maybe. I might have if I, you know, had grown the balls to do it. Maybe. But I don't know. And like, there's so much more to me than MS, and I think my YouTube channel definitely depicts that. I wouldn't just make MS videos because like I love talking about tattoos, I love traveling, I love festivals, I love vegan food. Do you know, there's so much more to me than MS, but maybe it was MS that kind of pushed me to start it. I don't know. I'm currently on a career break and I'm traveling to incredible places, like incredible places, which by the way is a privilege, massive privilege. I was saving for years to do this, but like I don't have kids, I don't have a mortgage, so I don't have anything like keeping me here, if that makes sense, in terms of like commitments. But like, I've been to Japan, which has been on my bucket list for years. Like I'd say nearly about 9 years, maybe 10. No, I'd say 8. I'd say about 8 years. Got to go to Korea. I got to do New York at Christmas. Are you joking? I've just come back from a road trip through the Deep South in America. I've learned so much. It was wholesome, but also super educational and just eye-opening. And like now, next month, I'm going to California, you know? So like, I really have experienced a lot. I've always loved traveling, and I've traveled quite a lot already. I did like traveling through Southeast Asia. I always loved going on like weekend breaks in Europe. I have traveled a lot like before MS, but it's great to now be able to do that again. Like, obviously you need money to be able to do these things. I obviously have an incredible benefit in the place that I work, where I can take a career break. Not all jobs offer that, so obviously like this isn't necessarily accessible to everyone. And also like, there's different variations of the disease, and it impacts people differently. So like, it's not that you'll always, oh, you have MS, so that means I can also go traveling. It's not necessarily that. I'm just saying that these are the things that I have done traveling since my diagnosis. And like a lot of people with MS, like they do travel. They do the things that they loved before they got their diagnosis. Yeah, things do need maybe a bit more planning, and you have to be a bit more careful, especially in terms of like infections, or maybe the countries that you're going to in terms of vaccines. Bad brain day, you know, planning around treatments and stuff. And obviously then if there is physical disability there, like that has to be taken into account as well. So it's not necessarily that traveling is super easy. It's a thumbs up from my side. No, but I've done it and I plan to continue to do it. I love tattoos. Let me tell you something. I know you can't really tell from my attire at the moment. I think I must have nearly 60 tattoos at this stage, and I love them. And I was actually worried that I wouldn't be able to get tattoos. Sounds crazy. Sounds ridiculous. But when I went on my second treatment, it's much stronger than my other treatment that I was on, and I am way more immunocompromised. I was kind of like, fuck, can I get tattoos? But I can. Again, I need a lot more planning. I can't have it too close to my treatment. I also can't get tattoos if I have to get an MRI, like within 6 weeks before the MRI. So there is a lot more planning, and it's obviously harder then to get bookings because it just depends when the tattoo artist books open and when they're taking bookings and all that. So there is way more planning. But I have gotten loads of tattoos since getting my MS diagnosis, and I still continue to do so, which makes me happy, which makes me very happy. Not actually getting them, because I fucking hate getting tattoos, but I love how they look on my body. I love how they look on my body. I also no longer cry about MS, like talking about it with people. I'm very, 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 not grounded, but like emotionally stable when I'm talking about it. Every now and again I'll get this like overwhelming feeling in me being like, fuck, I went through that. Like I actually experienced that, and it's not till sometimes I'm telling it to a new person, like I'm like, holy fuck, like that was bizarre. But for the most part I don't cry about it, and like it's not to shame anyone who cried. I cried for, I'd say, at least a year and a half of like when everything started. I would cry so regularly about it, but I think like that does come with time, you know. Now I don't know what the future holds, do you know what I mean? Like I don't know if I continue to get new lesions, there's a very high chance that I have to get that bone marrow transplant or the stem cell transplant, which is extremely invasive, like extremely invasive, and like that's terrifying to think about. And I know for a fact, like if I was to go down that route, I probably would have some tears. So it's not to say like, oh, I don't cry anymore and I'll never cry. That's not the case. You just don't know what the future holds, you know. So, and like there's been so many ups and downs, and most people with MS will say that it's a journey. I hate saying that, but it is, and it probably is like a lifelong journey. But there are some incredible things that still happen in your life. But the thing is, maybe I won't have to get that stem cell transplant. Maybe I'll just be on the treatment that I'm on now for life. Maybe my MS will just go into remission. Who knows? So you just have to take each day as it comes. And like I try not to be like, oh fuck, what's 5 years down the line? What's 10 years down the line? Again, that comes with time. But I think focusing like on the super like day-to-day, week to week, it really, really, really makes you be more present and like living your best life as best you can. That is all, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this has been helpful to someone. I hope it has shown that yes, fucking MS is shy. It is. And there are some really low moments, really low, but good things still do happen in your life. And it's not like, I kind of want to show that MS doesn't fully control my life, you know, and hopefully that is something that you can take from this as well. I was also thinking of doing like life lessons that I've learned since getting my MS diagnosis. I think that would be really cool, because I've learned a lot. I have learned a lot. So I might do that. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope it's been helpful, and I shall see you all in the next one. Bye!